UFC comes to the White House last night while Democrats try to counter-program. Oil prices tumble overnight as President Trump announces he's made a deal with Iran. It's official. And Tulsi Gabbard, as she heads out the door, she drops a major bomb on the origins of COVID. It's Monday, June 15th, and this is news and commentary from America's Heartland. You're watching Heartlander News. Welcome into Heartlander News. I'm Chris Stigall. Well, it was exciting, if true, and if everything holds. Vice President Vance calling into Fox yesterday morning, Sunday morning, to make the news official.
Well, first of all, I do think it's a big moment for the United States of America. Thanks, of course, to the president's leadership and the hard work of the entire team. Three things that I think are important for the American people just to appreciate about what this deal does for all of us as Americans. Number one, this is the immediate opening of the Straits of Hormuz and, of course, the lifting of the naval blockade that we've had on Iran along with it. The number two thing that it means is that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, and not just pursue a nuclear weapon, but procure or try to buy a nuclear weapon as well. That's built into this agreement. And then the third thing is, and this only happens, to be clear, if Iran delivers on their promise. And so there's an approach here where we verify and where there are real benefits so long as Iran meets their end of the obligation. But if the Iranians comply with this deal, it is going to fundamentally transform the Middle East for the next 50 years. It's going to end the war. It's going to make the Middle East more investable. It's going to mean a lot of prosperity, lower energy prices for the American people. This region of the world has been a basket case for my entire life and longer than that. And what the president has really set us to do is to certainly eliminate the nuclear threat of Iran. That's done. But now possibly to build to a new era of Middle East prosperity and success, where it's not a region of the world where the United States has to worry about so much, but where, frankly, we can generate a lot of prosperity for the American people out of that region. That's a very, very big win. And it all happened because the president stuck with it.
Of course, it is a huge win, and President Trump posted on Truth Social before Vice President Vance went on television to make that announcement yesterday. The deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran is now complete. Congratulations to all. I hereby fully authorize the toll-free opening of the Strait of Hormuz and simultaneously herewith authorize the immediate removal of the United States naval blockade. Ships of the world, start your engines. Let the oil flow. Speaking of oil, it is noteworthy that oil prices fell and stocks rose Sunday after President Trump said the United States had reached a deal. The specifics remain unclear as of Sunday evening, but restoring shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has been among Mr. Trump's top priorities. So huge. Futures for the S&P 500 rose a bit. Gasoline prices dropped. Oil prices dropped 4%. So big news. Of course, we'll watch the markets as the week progresses. But Barack Obama was out there, on the other hand, at number 276 here, Aaron. Old President Obama, just in case you were wondering what he thought of everything, you know, the guy that delivered pallets of cash to Iran and effectively put the foot on the gas pedal to allow them nuclear capabilities. He surfaced, and he has thoughts about what President Trump's deal with Iran means.
You spent a lot of time wrestling with the threat of a nuclear Iran. How do you think things are being handled right now there?
It is doubtful that any agreement that arises is going to be significantly different or a significant improvement from the deal that we had in the first place. And had worked for a long stretch of time before the United States pulled out of it. So I'm hopeful that bombing stops and ordinary people are no longer suffering as a consequence of the war. And then in retrospect, it's a reminder that on a lot of difficult foreign policy problems, the notion that we can just bully our way or bomb our way to solutions may sometimes seem appealing But the fact of the matter is that taking the time to explore diplomacy and exhaust the possibilities of coming up with deals that don't solve 100% of the problem, but solve 80, 90% of the problem, while avoiding the necessity of going to war. You'd think we would have learned that lesson by now, but it seems like every so often we have to relearn that lesson again.
Well, I got to tell you, you hear that guy, and then you put that up against the UFC match on the White House lawn and President Trump's handling of Iran, and you just see the difference, don't you? And it's as old as time. He's right. I mean, there have been lessons learned throughout history on his style of diplomacy versus President Trump's rough and tumble, I'll bust you in the chops if you don't comply way of doing things. And peace through strength is obviously what works. Diplomacy, as Mr. Obama was trying to suggest, somehow achieved something great. Of course, it did not. You can't have diplomatic relations with lunatic theocracies rooted in Islam. You can't have it, particularly if they're nuked up, and you certainly don't hand them cash, Mr. Obama. Nevertheless, it's good to have his perspective up against the success of President Trump's peace agreement. If this holds, it will rank, unlike what President Obama said, it will actually rank as one of the most significant foreign policy achievements of President Trump's term and possibly American history, as far as I'm concerned. It will reaffirm a truth that Washington repeatedly forgets. Peace is not the opposite of strength. Peace is actually the product of strength. You know, for months, critics painted this false binary. Either Trump would stumble into a major war or he'd surrender at the negotiating table. It was never the actual choice because Trump understood what the strongest negotiators have always known. The best agreements are often secured before the ink even dries. They're won when one side holds all the cards. And that's precisely what appears to have occurred anyway. Iran spent decades building a network of proxies, threatening shipping lanes, and weaponizing regional instability. And Barack Obama did a lot to help that, by the way. Previous administrations, like Obama's, they altered between accommodation and hesitation, hoping, or not caring, that the problem would solve itself. And President Trump chose, thankfully, a different path. He built leverage, the military, economic, diplomatic, and then he layered it with strategic certainty. Iran never understood that President Trump wasn't really negotiating to begin with. He was patiently dictating the terms of everything. Trump never caved to midterm political pressure. He paid the political capital. He never flinched and kept his eye on what was right for America and the world. He organized military assets to create crushing leverage, and he used it decisively. This is the same leader who has once again proven himself the greatest problem-solving president of our lifetime, and, by the way, as a bank shot, the preeminent peacemaker of our time. The implications of this stretch far beyond the Middle East. A stable Strait of Hormuz means reliable energy flows, lower global oil prices, and reduced costs. That ripples through shipping, manufacturing, transportation, agriculture. When energy markets become predictable, that's when prosperity becomes possible. That's when inflation falls. That's when families start to feel it at the pump. Factories start to feel it on their energy costs. Farmers in their operating costs. This deal doesn't just end confrontation. It fuels economic momentum as we're entering the AI age. And critics long claimed that projecting American strength was a provocative thing, like Obama suggested there. But history keeps delivering the opposite verdict, actually. Weakness invites aggression and testing. Vacuums invite conflict. Clarity and resolve, though, deter the wars that would otherwise erupt. Ronald Reagan understood this. Donald Trump embodies it. The goal was never war with Iran. The goal was changing Iran's behavior without a wider war. If achieved, this validates an entire governing philosophy. This victory does not stand alone. It rests atop a record of decisive action, securing the border, slashing taxes, regulations too, launching the historic Doge fraud detection program, revitalizing manufacturing and energy dominance through smart tariffs and the Don Roe doctrine, as the president calls it. And, of course, beautifying the nation's capital. All while overseeing America's transformation. In the AI era, Trump has simultaneously delivered peace abroad and prosperity at home. If the coming days bring a formal peace agreement and reopened trade routes and lowered tensions in one of the world's most volatile regions, Americans should all pause and recognize what they're witnessing. This is not the triumph of weakness or endless talking, again, as Barack Obama would have displayed. This is the triumph of leverage. This is the triumph of clarity. It's the triumph of a president who actually understands how the world works. Amen. Meanwhile, President Trump, after this, heads to the White House lawn and has himself a party. I don't know if you watched any of it last night, but the UFC came to the White House lawn, and it was an entrance suitable for Donald Trump and the UFC and Dana White. Give me number 281 here, Aaron, as the fellows roll in to the lawn and the claw. It's fantastic. And then an epic flyover after the event. I don't know if you saw the thousands of people that had converged out there in the mall to continue to watch, even those that couldn't get in the immediate White House grounds, but watch the flyover here after. And it was all on President Trump's 80th birthday. By the way, I don't have it, and we won't play the entire thing, but Dan and Shay, the country artists, sang the national anthem during the World Cup, and it is being passed around all over X and social media. If you didn't see it and you want to watch and listen to an absolutely beautiful rendition of the Star Spangled Banner by Dan and Shay, the country artist. Check it out. Go watch it. It'll give you goosebumps. And that's what the whole weekend was. Positively goosebumpy. People are feeling good. There's swagger back in the country, and you can't take it from the country. You can't take the patriotism and pride and sense of strength people are beginning to feel. But boy, they sure want to. The vaudevillian Harry Enten over there at CNN says, people really don't like this. Trust him. He's got the polling data or some such thing in number 84 here.
Let's just say this much. They do not like it. They don't like it. I like you, Amar, but Americans don't find this thing to be appropriate. Take it here. Take a look here. UFC White House fights are appropriate. Just 16%. Just 16% overall. And among Republicans, even among Republicans, you know, the diehard base Republican Party with Trump through thick and thin, just 31% of Republicans. His approval rating amongst Republicans overall, as you know, usually hovers a little bit north of 80%. So we're talking 50 points lower here. And, you know, this overall, you know, being 16%, you know, what is it, like 28% of Americans, you know, believe in telepathy? So this is even below that.
Does this fall into a broader pattern with the White House of voters' minds?
Yeah, I think this is the big problem here, Omar, which is, Americans just don't think that Donald Trump and this White House is in touch with them because, they put on stuff like that Americans don't really care about. Take a look here. Say the White House is out of touch with people like you. 60% overall. We're talking about 3 in 5 Americans. And look among independents. 80% of independents say that the White House is out of touch with people like them. So all of a sudden you have a White House that is potentially putting on events such as this UFC fights. And, Americans' top issue is inflation. And what's Trump's net approval rating on that? Like -50? And you go to yourself, okay, appropriate, no on the UFC fights. And then you put it together with what they actually care about. No wonder that the American people say 60% say the White House is out of touch with people like them and 80% of independents.
I mean, it's a big push. Why do you think Trump loves the UFC so much?
Yeah, okay. We've seen Donald Trump go to these UFC fights before, right? We see that there may be UFC fights, on the White House lawn come this weekend. And, it's because the UFC and MMA is a safe space. It is a safe space. It's a nice place. It's warm and lovely for the President of the United States. Party ID league among fans of MMA. Look at this. Republicans hold the lead among MMA fans. Look at that, +14. Versus soccer, if he goes to the World Cup, I don't think that's going to be friendly territory for the president. Look at that. Democrats hold the party ID lead there of +12. And we know that Donald Trump was booed at the Garden. Look at that. Democrats hold a 28-point lead on fans of the NBA.
So Marco Rubio compared the founding of the UFC to landing on the moon.
Yes, he did.
However you feel about that.
Yes.
How are the prediction markets viewing his chances as sort of emerging from the 2028 pack?
Yeah, one of the most bizarre comparisons I've ever heard. Chance to be the 2028 GOP president nominee. Look at this. Rubio, Vance, neck and neck. And I think part of Rubio appealing in 2028 will be appealing to those young fans, appealing to those MMA fans. And at this point, look at that. His chances way up. He's really in a dogfight with JD Vance for the nomination, according to Kalshi prediction markets at this point.
Harry Enten, always appreciate you being here.
Pleasure to be with you, my dear friend. Happy Friday.
Yeah. And masculinity just dripping from Harry Enten. I suppose that the American people just love a vaudevillian at a big board and on CNN. This guy, I would like to see the data points on the number of people who find the UFC fight inappropriate. It was President Trump's birthday. Yes, he personally enjoys the UFC. Aaron, I don't know. I'm not a UFC guy. I mean, to be honest, I don't know much about it. I don't know MMA. I don't know UFC. I don't follow that stuff. Do you? Out of curiosity?
No, not really.
Okay, that's all right. We are probably in the minority as men in the country. The UFC reaches roughly 100 million fans in the United States. I just looked this up while I was listening to Harry Enten rattle on about how unpopular it is. The UFC events generally generate around 2.4 million per pay-per-view buys, which is an enormous number. It's bigger than boxing as a year-round. It's much bigger than most niche sports like NASCAR, NHL, golf, or tennis, particularly among young men. And this is apparently what Harry Enten does not understand, and what I would think anybody who's remotely, even a political novice, would understand about the imagery of all of this. And here's, again, I'm just reading this straight from ChatGPT. UFC's audience overlaps heavily with younger men, a group that's become increasingly influential in American politics. And that's one reason politicians like Donald Trump have paid attention to UFC events and personalities. If I'm asking, and this is how ChatGPT is summarizing my question. I just simply asked ChatGPT, how popular is UFC, since Harry Enten says everybody hates it. And ChatGPT summarized this way: if you're asking whether it's mainstream now, the answer is yes. 20 years ago, fringe sport. Today, it's one of the most successful sports properties in the world, particularly with young men. So who's the left got? What's the left counter-programming with? Barack Obama? Or maybe some of this? This was literally what the left put on last night while the UFC match was going on, by the way.
You're bound to lose, you fascists bound to lose. Hey there, all you fascists, let me put you straight. When you come for the rest of us, we'll fight you at the gate, and you will lose, you fascists bound to lose.
Yeah, nothing says attracting young men to politics like an aging white left-wing woman. Why do they? Aaron and I were talking about this right before the show started today. What is it about them singing? The left is constantly singing. They work. One of my favorite examples of the left singing was at I played it a lot on my old radio show. Aaron, did you ever see the clip of the woman who sang about them cutting down the trees in Washington State? I think it was in Seattle. It's one of the finest bits of song and performance art you're ever going to watch, and I encourage you to go look it up.
I didn't start really watching or seeing them until Doge last year, and then there's a lot of Doge songs with really catchy lyrics.
It's amazing. They do always sing. So they put on some. No kidding. That was a counter. I'm not joking. That what you just saw there, Bette Midler and her backup singers there. You fascists, you're bound to lose, or whatever it was she was singing. Apparently, Jane Fonda arranged it, and I forget exactly what it was called. But and I don't even know where. Do you know where you could watch that last night, Aaron? I'm not even sure where it aired. I saw it on social media. She's getting more attention on social media.
C-SPAN.
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 Of course.
Yeah, had one feed, but I don't know where it actually aired.
It was something called Rise Up. What the heck? Sorry, guys. Let me get my glasses here. I'm trying to read it just to give them due credit. Rise Up, Sing Out. Oh, that's what it's a terrible address because it all runs together and I couldn't even figure it out. riseupsingout.com, Aaron, in case you want to do a little research after the show about Bette and her friends there last night. riseupsingout.com. And of course, the entire thing is in their minds, they are protesting what they believe to be a silencing of their speech, which is pretty rich coming from these people, considering that the American left has done nothing but try to silence, jail, hold hostage, spy on any of us who oppose them in any way. And now, simply because they don't get carte blanche to weaponize television news shows and failing late night shows to limitlessly attack Republicans and President Trump, now that corporate America is actually saying, there's just not much of an appetite for this left-wing rage. The Sidney Sweeneys of the world are no longer cowing. The Cracker Barrels no longer kowtow to the left. This is fascism to them. And what they're really protesting, of course, is that they're not in charge anymore. They're mad that their bullying and their control is no longer what is being implemented and celebrated in American culture today. So it's kind of funny, I have to say. Bette Midler and her Jane Fonda and all the old liberal white ladies. I don't know what it is about old liberal white women, but man, are they insufferable. And they just, I have this working theory that boomer liberal women, whites, they're a very specific demo. Probably now in their 70s or older. They come from the bra burning era when they thought that they were really doing something. That was back during the John Kerry throwing his war medals over the White House wall gate into the lawn, protesting the Vietnam War, Jane Fonda sitting on the tanks. They think that their protestations during the Vietnam era are exactly the same as today. I'm telling you, it is like their last gasp for relevance or something. Rather than go to church, donate their time at the senior center, or help pick up garbage along the side of the road, or do anything that could actually be useful and beneficial to their communities. These old white ladies of the boomer era think that, they're going back to kind of relive their hippy dippy days, where if it feels good, do it. They're in the van and the Grateful Dead, and that's all I can conclude. It's just a desperate clinging to some kind of relevance, and they're trying to bring back an era that is long gone, and they see it as analogous in their crazy heads.